Good evening, everybody. My name is Cassie Molnaric, and I'm the Public Involvement Specialist for the Nevada Department of Transportation. I'd like to formally welcome everybody to the US 50 Dayton Operational Study virtual public meeting. Now, this is the live portion of our meeting and the kickoff of the study public comment period, which is going to last until June 1st. Now, please note that this meeting is being recorded. All comments will be retained for public record. Now, during the meeting, all attendees' screens will be off and each user will be muted. And tonight you can expect the meeting to last approximately an hour and a half. There's going to be about a 30-minute presentation on the study led by our project manager, followed by a virtual Q&A. You're going to be able to submit questions, comments, and concerns at the end of the presentation using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Those questions will be read aloud and then answered. We ask that you please do not use the raise your hand function. We're going to offer a little bit more instruction on how to submit a comment at the appropriate time. But first, helping with the virtual meeting tonight, I'd like to introduce Heather Fromer, who's with CA Group. And also with CA Group, we have Chad Anson, who's going to be available to present and help answer some questions. But for now, I'd like to get things started by turning it over to Laura Wise. Laura is the NDOT project manager for the US 50 Dayton operational study. And Laura, I'll let you kick things off.
Thank you, Cassie. My name is Laura Wise, and I work in project scoping at NDOT. I'm the project manager for the US 50 Dayton operational study. The presentation tonight is going to cover the operational study that is being conducted between Pinecone and Ney Road. Because of your feedback and concerns over wild horses, we are including a brief overview of the upcoming horse fencing project. Tonight, we will present what an operational study is, what existing conditions were evaluated, potential long-term visions for the US 50 corridor, and the next steps for this study. Next slide, please. NDOT is currently developing a project to install horse fencing along US 50. There will be 3 sections of fencing, each fence end guarded by painted cattle guards across US 50. Additional lighting and flashing horse warning signs will be added at the ends of each fencing section. Continuous highway lighting will be installed between Occidental and 6 Mile Canyon. All 3 sections of fencing and the lighting improvements will be completed under one contract. The contract will go out for bids in 2021 and is expected to take 3 to 6 months to construct. Please reach out to NDOT at info@dot.nv.gov and enter US 50 horse fencing in the subject line if you have questions regarding the horse fencing project. The purpose of this study on US 50 from Pinecone to Ney is to develop a long-term vision for how this corridor will operate under future conditions. NDOT is not the approver for developments, but can account for how the traffic generated by the developments connects to the roadway system. Having a long-term vision will be a useful tool to make projects that will help this long-term vision come to fruition. The goal is to establish a long-term vision incorporating the needs and concerns from all stakeholders, both public organizations and you, the users of the roadway, to establish corridor consistency for all future developments along this roadway. Next, please. Next slide, please. We are continually working with public agencies, including Lyon County, Story County, the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, the City of Carson City, and now we are inviting you, the public, to be a partner with us in this study. Operations refers to how the road is performing in terms of safety and travel time. We are performing this study to understand what is happening on the roadway under current conditions and establish how the roadway will function in the future. We are taking this knowledge to develop an action plan for possible future improvements. We are in the planning phase, trying to first identify the long-term vision for the corridor. As resources and funding become available, this long-term vision will still need to go through the environmental phase and design before any projects can be constructed. Next slide, please. NDOT hired CA Group to lead this study effort. Prior to this meeting, they gathered all existing data, including approved developments and growth projections for the area. CA Group forecasted the operations and safety to develop 3 distinct long-term visions that will address the identified growth and safety issues along this corridor. As part of this vision development, we wanted to reach out to you for input on what you would like to see for this corridor. Your comments, along with the existing data and alternatives, will be compiled into a report with a recommendation for consideration by NDOT leadership and our other partners sometime in July. Now, to further explain the limits of this study and the preliminary alternative visions that have been developed, I will turn this presentation over to Chad Anson from CA Group.
Thank you, Laura. So as mentioned, the US 50 operational study is studying US 50 from Pinecone Road to Ney Road through the East Dayton Valley. The main limits obviously are US 50. As part of the project, though, we were looking at some of the major and minor intersections along the corridor to see how that access would be provided to US 50 through various alternatives that we'll discuss a little bit later. One key to this study was looking at the planned corridor development, and it's a big driver of the study itself. Our staff worked with Lyon County Planning to identify some of the major master plans that are out along the US 50 corridor. Most notably would be the Traditions Master Plan, Sage Vista, and some of the other smaller ones. As part of our forecasting effort, we did incorporate the traffic impact analysis provided by those developments into our study to help us look at both current traffic volumes, but also how do those volumes increase over the years through their additional development, but also just the historical growth along the US 50 corridor. Another key component to the project was looking at the crash data out there. Our crash data was based from July of 2013 to July of 2018, mainly because of when we started the study. What we identified were several of the top intersections with crashes were Fortune Drive with over around 20 crashes, resulting in 12 injuries. Riverboat had 15 crashes with 16 injuries. Retail Road with 14 crashes, 10 injuries. After the Retail Road intersection with 14 crashes, the other intersections tend to drop off as far as crashes and, most importantly, injuries. We did want to note, though, however, at Ambrose Lane between July 2013 and July 2018, there were three crashes with 2 fatalities involved there. So that was a very critical spot for us to look at. We do understand that there has been some more fatalities since 2018, and those were considered in our analysis, but because that data is not published yet, we were not unable to show that as part of our assessments. Another key driver along the corridor and why we're doing the operational study was mainly looking at the delay and congestion that not only is occurring within the corridor today, but what will be occurring 20 years from now in the year 2040. With these operational studies, we usually look at a 20-year planning horizon. So that's how we came up with the 2040, what we would call design year. As you can see today, a majority of the intersections are operating in what we would term as appropriate levels of service. The level of service for an intersection is a criteria that we use as engineering and planning studies to identify how well an intersection operates. Much like a high school grading scale, A is extremely good operations, B, C is your average operations, and D is really what we use as our threshold, that if an intersection is operating at a level service D or higher, that they are considered acceptable. And those level of services are identified by how much delay you occur as a driver out there in that intersection. Anything operating at a level service F obviously would be unacceptable. You will also see on this graph a level service called E. What E stands for is the intersection is pretty much at its capacity. So any minor hiccup in that intersection during the peak hour can cause significant delays and trigger it into an F. For example, someone simple as texting or taking that extra couple seconds to look up and see that the lights turn green, or someone's hitting their brakes real quick. Those little things can quickly cause a level service E intersection to go into level service F. So for 2020, as I mentioned, really all the intersections except Riverboat and Cardelli in the PM peak are operating at a level service of D or greater. Riverboat obviously goes into a level service F with almost a little bit over a 1 minute average delay at that intersection. and US 50 and Occidental Drive on the east side of Riverboat is at that saturation point to where little hiccups in the intersection cause them to fail. However, when we look at the 2040 no action plan out there, if nothing happened on that corridor for the next 20 years, as you can see, the intersection completely the whole corridor fails with some very substantial delays out there. When you see the level service F with no delay number there, it means that there is a movement in that intersection that has a delay in excess of 5 minutes. So for example, US 15 Pinecone Road, where you have a level service F in the AM and PM, it is most likely caused by the traffic wanting to get onto the US 50 corridor, that because of the amount of traffic on the US 50 corridor and the lack of gaps, that you could be waiting up to 5 minutes to make a right turn onto US 50 or a left turn onto US 50, which is a very undesirable situation, obviously just from a delay and congestion standpoint, but it also creates a substantial safety concern for us that when people start waiting that long, they start making rash decisions or just not thinking clearly or trying to jump into that gap. And that is when you get the severe crashes going on. So through the process, we've come up with what we call three concepts for basically addressing the levels of access, because we see that as the major concern of the US 50 corridor, both from a safety perspective and an operations perspective. These three concepts incorporate different techniques, the use of signals on a variety of scales, more and less signals. Also, how do we allow people to get in the US 50 system? Do we allow them to make lefts across traffic? Or is it right in, right out? So all of these alternatives presented tonight utilize a different level of those as we go. So with an arterial concept, our first concept, it's a very similar situation to what's out there today, just basically the addition of a lot of traffic signals. Utilizing signalized access at major intersections, utilizing what we call a high T intersection where you can make a left in or left out and still be protected from oncoming traffic in the direction you're turning onto. Very common, these are some of the situations we see at the recently constructed US 50 corridor out near Stagecoach. Access to the US 50 corridor be very similar to today's access points. We are not eliminating any access with this. So the access you see out today is access into the corridor. We would be looking at adding an additional lane in each direction to create a 6-lane facility throughout the whole corridor from that we studied to give us the operations we need. At the end of the day, you'd be looking at approximately 11 traffic signals along the corridor, our study corridor, and looking at utilizing a posted speed of 45 miles per hour, mainly because with that many signals, it's hard to get up to higher speeds, and two, we don't want to encourage people to try to race up to those higher speeds and create a more severe situation at traffic signals of people trying to stop from high speeds. The next concept we looked at was modifying the access to the US 50 a little bit more, limiting some of the movements into the US 50 corridor to really start putting more of a prioritization on through traffic on US 50. And this is what we call our parkway concept. So with this, we'd utilize less traffic signals than in the arterial concept and utilize more high T intersections, which can affect in limiting some of the access, which require some folks to possibly go down a couple blocks to make a U-turn to go the other direction because we were not allowing a left turn across US 50. So you do see that minor reduction in access points. Once again, slowly prioritizing the US 50 traffic. But because of that prioritization and not having so many access points, we are able to only have to widen a portion of the US 50 corridor from what it is today. With the parkway concept, we would need to provide 6 lanes, which is 3 lanes in each direction from the west side of our project to 6 Mile Canyon Road. And that 6 Mile Canyon Road, we would reduce it down to the current configuration of 2 lanes each direction. With the parkway concept, we're able to reduce the number of traffic signals and get to approximately 6 signals within the corridor. Because of this, it allows us to have a posted speed of 45 miles an hour from the west side of the project to 6 Mile Canyon, mainly where a majority of the traffic signals are. And then after east of 6 Mile Canyon, we are able to increase the posted speed back up to 60 miles per hour. And so the parkway is kind of the mid-level, what I'd call the mid-level alternative as far as restricting access or starting to control access into the US 50 corridor. The final alternative we looked at is what we would call the controlled access corridor. And this is where we are utilizing an extensive amount of reduction of access to the corridor, really controlling where people can come in and out of the US 50 corridor. You're doing this by the use of grade separated crossings / interchanges that you would typically see in more of a larger urban corridor, and having a lot of the movements from the US 50 corridor be right in, right out type movements to where people are not making left turns across traffic. Because of this situation, we would need to maximize the use of frontage roads, both existing and new ones. Once again, we're minimizing that access to US 50 to really put a priority on US 50 traffic. Once again, because of that prioritization of US 50 traffic, we would only need 6 lanes west of Fortune Drive, and then we could reduce the laneage to 4 lanes or 2 lanes in each direction east of Fortune Drive. This alternative would provide 2 signals along the US 50 corridor, and also that posted speed through the signalized area. It would be at 45 miles an hour. Once we reach that controlled access facility, we could raise the speed to 65 miles per hour. On the right side there, from top to bottom, you see the 3 different types of concepts we have out there. The top right being the arterial concept, where we have 6 lanes in each direction, or 3 lanes in each direction. You'd have 2-way left turn lanes, raised concrete median in areas. We would still provide a shoulder out there. The middle graphic shows where we would have the parkway reduced down to 4 lanes. Very similar to the arterial still, but we're not using quite as many signals and using a little bit of access control. And then on the bottom right, that graphic, you see where we have the controlled of access corridor with 2 lanes in each direction. So at this point, we would be east of Fortune Drive, using barrier rail to separate those opposing lanes of traffic, and also utilizing frontage roads to encourage folks for those local trips to stay off the US 50 corridor and use the frontage road system. So what we'll do now briefly is I'm going to show some exhibits of what we have proposed for the corridor. So bear with me. We'll first start with the arterial concept out there. And as this video starts moving, we'll walk you through the corridor. As you can see at Pinecone and Retail Road, you would still have full access to the US 50 corridor, both right in, right out, and also making left turns across US 50. Both Pinecone and Retail Road would be signalized. As we continue to move to the east, you'll see Fortune Drive come into the picture. Once again, 3 lanes in each direction. Fortune Drive becomes what we call a signalized high T, to where you can still make left turn movements across US 50, and you are protected by a raised concrete median, as you see there in the white shading as it's kind of moving down there. Right in here would be your concrete median to protect drivers making that left turn onto US 50. Continuing to the east, we come up to Segala Road, and also where the Traditions Master Plan, Traditions Parkway comes into the US 50 corridor. That would just be a regular signalized intersection. Continuing to the east, at Enterprise, we'd have what we'd call an unsignalized left turn, where you're protected by a median island, still allowing left turns from US 50 into Enterprise, but not allowing left turns across US 50 to go eastbound. Graves Road, Graves Drive, same thing, allowing left turns in both across in both directions. So Graves, you could get on to westbound US 50. At James Avenue, we have its traffic signal located there. Ambrose, we just have an unsignalized left turn for traffic coming westbound on US 50. You would not be able to get out on Ambrose and make a left to go westbound on US 50. At Riverboat and Cardelli, we would have a full-blown traffic signal at that location. And same with Occidental Drive on the east side of Riverboat, we would have a traffic signal there to allow traffic in and out. And as we approach Fort Churchill 6 Mile Canyon intersection, we have a full-blown traffic signal at that location. You'll also start seeing west or east of here that we start looking at trying to develop a more extensive frontage road system to really try to get that local traffic that's staying local to stay off the US 50 corridor, and try to avoid the left turn movements, because those are the dangerous ones where we can see high severity accidents. At LaFawn, we'd be looking at a traffic signal there to allow all movements from those cross streets to the US 50 corridor. Mark Twain would be a right in, right out situation along westbound US 50. As you approach Rainbow Drive, we would be looking at an unsignalized left turn from eastbound US 50 onto Rainbow Drive. Therefore, Rainbow Drive, if you're wanting to go westbound on US 50, you would go down to Pine Nut where there'd be a traffic signal to let you make that left turn. Pine Nut would be a full-blown traffic signal at that location. And as we come to the, another Rainbow Drive there to the east of Pine Nut, we have an unsignalized two-way intersection. So that one would be like it is today with two-way stop control. And then Bryce Road would be our final location with the traffic signal located there. So that was the arterial concept. We will now, let me run you through what we would call the parkway concept. Once again, you'll start seeing us limiting access, for example, at Pinecone Road. You'd only be able to make a right out onto westbound US 50. If you're coming from eastbound, you can turn onto Pinecone, but you would not be able to turn on from Pinecone Road to go eastbound on US 50. You would need to work your way over to Retail Road to use that proposed traffic signal at that location. At Fortune Drive, we would maintain the same signalized high T intersection as we proposed in the arterial, allowing access to the north side of US 50 through a signal. You would also have left turn opportunities from Fortune Drive to go to eastbound US 50, utilizing the traffic signal. As you can see at this point, we're still 3 lanes in each direction with the parkway concept. And as we approach Traditions Parkway, we'd be still looking at a signalized T there, similar to what we had in the arterial. And continuing as we go to the east. Three lanes in each direction. We are looking at trying to provide acceleration lanes when possible for these high T intersections. That's one of the key of those, is it allows you to come into a protected location and gain speed before you have to merge into the traffic that you're trying to merge in. Unsignalized at Graves Drive, unsignalized T intersection. At James Avenue, once again, an unsignalized high T. So you can see we're kind of trying to alternate back and forth between our high T intersections to allow for legal U-turn movements for those that maybe cannot make that left turn across US 50 to go in their desired direction. Once again, as we approach Riverboat and Cardelli, we do provide a full-blown traffic signal there. And the same with Occidental becomes an unsignalized. So a major change here from the arterial to the parkway is Occidental only allows left turns from US 50 onto Occidental. You would not be able to make a left turn from Occidental onto US 50. So therefore you would need to backtrack to the nearest signal either at Riverboat or Fort Churchill to make your legal U-turn to go in the direction you desire. Similarly with the parkway concept, as you get to the east of Fort Churchill, you start looking at the more developed frontage road system. You also see US 50 reduced down to 2 lanes in each direction. And here's where we start using a lot of the unsignalized high Ts to kind of control that access and utilizing the Ts in the frontage road system to direct traffic where we like them to go and come onto the US 50 corridor, thus minimizing the left turn opportunities against opposing traffic onto the corridor. Pine Nut here, another major change is this becomes a signalized T intersection. In the arterial concept, it was signalized. With this concept, you would not be able to make a left turn from the north side of US 50 to go to eastbound, or I'm sorry, from the south side to go eastbound on US 50 or westbound on US 50. Rainbow would be a 2-way stop control similar to what it is today. And Bryce Road is the final traffic signal in the system there, providing access to future residential development. And also to the south, this is where the second crossing of the Carson River would tie into that Lyon County is currently looking And then our final concept we'll look at is the controlled access corridor concept. Once again, on the far west side of the project, it's very, very similar to the Parkway, where we're limiting access movements across the US 50 corridor, trying to force traffic to the few traffic signals that we have out there in this concept. Looking at 3 lanes in each direction through this portion of the roadway that's out there. Once again, a signal at Retail Road. We'd have a signalized T intersection at Fortune Drive. And then as we move east past Fortune Drive, this is where the real control of access facility begins. We would reduce down to 2 lanes each direction with a barrier down the center median to protect each other from oncoming traffic. And what you'll start seeing is more frontage road systems being developed here. We would have an interchange at Traditions Parkway. And keep in mind, these interchanges are very high level. As if this alternative was to move forward, the interchanges would be more detailed out, additional alternatives looked at for each specific interchange at that time. So at this time, you have bridges over US 50 for these interchanges, and you have to access US 50 via on-ramp, off and on ramps, similar to the I-580 interstate through Reno, and the I-580 interstate through Carson City. You can see on the north side there, we've looked at the potential for a frontage road out there to help provide that local access. So since there is limited access to US 50 corridor, we still want locals to be able to get around within the local network. So through the use of future frontage roads, that's where we provide that access. And then as we continue east here, we'll come up on the next interchange. And as we get to the kind of the Occidental, Riverboat, 6 Mile Canyon area, we have tried to maximize the access as much as we can. We still have access to US 50 at 6 Mile and Fort Churchill. But as you can see, we've provided some slip ramp access on the north side from Riverboat into the US 50 corridor system. Also, as we scroll to the east here, you will be able to get onto that frontage road system on the north side to access the Maverick and the businesses in your residential communities on the north side of the freeway, also in a most direct manner that we could provide with this type of setup. At the Fort Churchill 6 Mile Canyon, you'd have a full-blown interchange. As of right now, here we're looking at US 50 going up and over 6 Mile Canyon and Fort Churchill, but the final configuration that would be determined at a later date should this concept be the one that is moved forward for long-term vision of the corridor. Once again, trying to maximize those local frontage roads as much as we can when possible to provide that local access. And as you can see, this would be the portion where US 50 could be posted up to 65 miles per hour because we have limited that movements onto US 50 from all the driveways. More of a high-speed corridor, really putting the focus on the throughput of the US 50 corridor itself. And as you can see, as we come up towards the Bryce Road area, this interchange location could be refined in the future. We have it a little bit to the east of Bryce Road, but this would be the last interchange or the first interchange, depending which way you were coming into the Dayton Valley. Once again, providing connection to that future connection over the Carson River on the south side of US 50. So that would be the controlled access concept. So we know there's definitely some thoughts there about, I'm sure, on the different intersections we have available. So I'm going to come back and look at some of those more closely here. So if we go to Retail Road, what we have is kind of what we're looking at here is Pinecone and Retail Road intersections with the different alternatives. This would be the arterial concept, once again, providing full access at Pinecone, left turns across US 50 in all directions, not basically mimicking what's out there today. We'd be looking at installing a traffic signal at Retail Road. When we go to the Parkway concept, once again, this is where we start trying to limit access to US 50 or the different movements that can cause congestion and safety concerns. So at Pinecone, we are only allowing a right out to go to the west We are allowing a right turn off of westbound US 50 to Pinecone. We are allowing a left turn from eastbound US 50 on Pinecone. We are restricting that left turn movement from Pinecone to eastbound US 50, and that traffic would need to use the local roads to get to Retail Road to the traffic signal in order to make that left turn to go eastbound. And the parkway and the controlled access for these two intersections are the same, limiting that access. As we go to Fortune Drive, the next one we'll look at, arterial concept puts a signalized T intersection in there. So providing all the movements we see today out at Fortune, you have both right in and right out off of westbound US 50. Eastbound US 50, you can make your left turn onto Fortune. You can also make a left turn coming out of Fortune into a channelized area where you have room for acceleration before having to merge into eastbound traffic. That one would also have a traffic signal. With the signalized high T's, one of the reasons we call them a high T is because basically high capacity. Because what this allows for is in this particular case, would allow eastbound US 50 traffic light to stay green and maintain flow while we allow left turn traffic to come into their own protected channelized area and then accelerate to a speed at which they could enter the roadway. And that is the same concept for the parkway in the controlled access. And actually all three alternatives for this particular intersection are the same. We know Pine Nut is a concern, especially with the Bus Light factory to the north here. So wanted to walk through those three scenarios for you. With the arterial section, just like it is today, except there would be a future traffic signal there from future traffic projections to provide that signalized access through that corridor. As we move into the parkway, where we're starting to put a higher priority onto US 50 throughput traffic, what we would end up doing there is allowing a left turn off of US 50 westbound or eastbound and allowing a left turn from Pine Nut onto eastbound US 50. Coming westbound, it would be a right in, right out situation. So if you were on Pine Nut on the south side of US 50, you would need to go over to Bryce Road to access the corridor, or you could go down to Rainbow, come up and make a legal U-turn at Pine Nut Drive. And then the controlled access concept, this is where we eliminate all access from Pine Nut Drive to US 50 at that particular location. Users would need to use the interchange to the east of here at Bryce Road to access, and then use the frontage road to come back to access Pine Nut Drive. Once again, these three alternatives are all about how much is the public interested in us restricting access and allowing a more of a priority to US 50 operations. And last but not least, this is one is always of major concern, is the US 50, or I'm sorry, the US 50 6 Mile Canyon Fort Churchill Road, and also having Occidental to the side there in Riverboat Cardelli. So in the arterial concept, we would have a traffic signal at Fort Churchill and 6 Mile Canyon. We would also have a traffic signal at Cardelli Riverboat. We would also have a traffic signal at Occidental between Riverboat and 6 Mile Canyon. Obviously, these three traffic signals would need to be coordinated just to avoid stop and go traffic as much as possible. But once again, if you start getting traffic signals this close together, you can run into some complications where you may have a little bit of stop and go traffic. If we look at the parkway concept, once again, starting to limit a little bit of access so we can maintain flow on US 50, signal at Riverboat Cardelli, signal at 6 Mile Fort Churchill. But for the Occidental, the east side of Occidental, we are only allowing left turns from US 50 to northbound. I should say we have access from eastbound US 50 to the north side of US 50. And from westbound US 50, you would have access to the south side. You would not be able to make a left turn from Occidental Drive across US 50 traffic in either direction. You would need to use the right outs to go down to the next intersection and make a legal U-turn to go the opposite direction. And then with the controlled access facility here at 6 Mile, this is where we utilize an interchange style grade separation structure at US 50 6 Mile and Fort Churchill. So you would utilize these off ramps and on ramps to get into the US 50 corridor. If you were trying to get to, say, Riverboat Drive and we're going eastbound, you would need to travel to the interchange and work your way back. Coming westbound, you would be able to go to the interchange, work your way down. But what we have provided at Riverboat is as you go west, we do provide access from Riverboat to westbound US 50. So if you were trying to go to Dayton from Riverboat, you would not have to go back to 6 Mile Canyon. You would be able to make a right turn on a frontage road system, continue to proceed west, and then enter the US 50 corridor from there. So kind of going back to our slides here. So what we did is we took these 3 different alternatives and looked at how they impact the traffic operations in 2040 along the US 50 corridor. If you remember a couple slides ago, we were showing 2040 operations if we did nothing and everything was failing along the corridor. With any of these improvements, we're seeing substantial improvement to the US 50 corridor operations, with many of them being in an A through C level, category level service, which is really good, is phenomenal service, to be honest with you. Very few level service D criteria being met, which is kind of the lowest bar that we can go to. Everything has to be level service D or higher. We do have a couple areas that have some failures going on them within the various types of alternatives out there. And mainly for the arterial and the parkway, when you look at US 50 in Pine Knot and US 50 Rainbow Drive East, those failures are really coming from the cross streets. It's not US 50 itself failing, but more of the cross streets trying to get into the traffic situation there on US 50 because of the volume. So several things could be looked at with the parkway. Additional laneage could be provided on US 50 down there, but it'd be very expensive to accommodate that one intersection. So we may look at ways to try to divert traffic to other intersections that aren't as busy to help reduce the delays there. Another way we measure the effectiveness of these alternatives is basically looking at the US 50 corridor from beginning to end. So from Pinecone to Ney Road, how long does it take you to get through the corridor? If we do nothing out there today, there's a delay of about 20 hours to 74 hours over a year. When we look at 2040, no action if we did nothing, we're out talking around 6,000 to 7,000 hours of network delay in a year. Obviously, that's very substantial. When we look at the 3 different alternatives, what you're seeing is a substantial reduction in that total network delay. How much delay do you experience driving through the corridor from one end to the other? The control of access obviously gives you the least amount of network delay because it's putting a high priority on US 50 throughput. The arterial, a little bit less or more delay there, and then the parkway additional delay as you look at the system in its entirety. One thing we do as part of the operational studies is there is the interactive highway safety design model that allows us to try to predict crashes out there and how these alternatives would affect driver behavior and potentially reduction of crashes. What we use is 2020. If what it looks like out there today, we consider that our baseline. So for example, if we had the arterial concept out there today, we would expect 1 extra crash per year out there on the corridor. If we had the parkway concept, we would expect 2 less crashes than what we would see if we did nothing out there at this point in time. And with the control of access, we would see 5 fewer crashes on a yearly basis than what's occurring today. In the year 2040, when we compare doing nothing over the next 20 years, we'll see an increase in 141 crashes per year estimated if we did nothing. And then from there, you can see, obviously, because our greater traffic volumes out there, you're going to see an increase in crashes regardless, but we're trying to minimize that amount of increase of crash increases. So the arterial, we would see, between now and going to 2040 with the additional traffic, we would see an additional 135 crashes per year starting in 2040. The parkway, taking a snapshot in 2040, we'd see 136, so very comparable to the arterial. And then the controlled access, once again, because we have eliminated a substantial amount of access points to the US 50 corridor, you only see approximately 108 crashes, additional 108 crashes per year in 2040 compared to if we did to today's scenario. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cassie. We have a survey here at the end of the program. Once we finish all up, as you exit out of the Zoom program, you will get a window that pops up asking you to participate in this survey. This is very important for us. This is going to ask you for your feedback and concerns of the corridor and also where you want us to place our priorities. This goes into the public record, even though this is not a NEPA document or an environmental document. We want the public's feedback. We want to know what everyone's thinking on these 3 different alternatives, because at the end of the day, we need to recommend a long-term vision for this corridor. So that can be applied to not only NDOT's long-term planning, but also Lyon County's long-term planning, and also give Story County and Lyon County the ability to figure out where those access points to US 50 will be. So as they look to find a street network system between those 2 counties and connecting them with future development, they know where they're going to be able to connect into US 50. This survey will be up not only tonight, but if you have friends, family, neighbors that were unable to make this tonight, this can be found on the US 50 Dayton website, US 50 website. There'll be a link to take this survey from there. What we would like to do though is, so the survey will be the kind of the official response. But I am going to pop up a poll real quick that we'd like to get, and it directly looks like the survey, except we don't ask for regular other additional comment on this poll. But I'd like to solicit your feedback right now as Cassie takes us into the Q&A portion of how you feel about the 3 different concepts. And I'll start that poll right now, and you can fill it out at any time. And then once we're done with the Q&A section, we can look at the results of it. And Cassie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, so you guys should see a poll on your screen, just as Chad said. So this kind of gives us a feel for things here during the meeting. But again, there's going to be a formal poll that's going to appear at the end whenever you exit. So just take a moment, go ahead and fill out the poll. All right, go ahead and finish up that poll for us whenever you have a moment. Take your time with it. But Chad, would you go ahead and advance to the next slide for me? So now we're going to get to the Q&A portion of tonight's presentation. So you can submit a question, a comment, a concern, actually using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So we just ask that you type your first and your last name in there for the public record so that we have it. Again, so you can submit those questions there. And I already see we're getting a few in there. So I'm going to hand it over to Heather. And Heather, if you wouldn't mind telling us who's asking the question, and then go ahead and state the question for us.
Of course. Thank you, Cassie. So we did have a few come in during the meeting, so I will group those together. So our first set of questions is from someone, Jerry Lynn Metters, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Her first couple of questions are, hold on, people are now jumping in now. I noticed last summer traffic was being monitored by traffic strip meter. Sorry, they metered the traffic during the summer when school at Riverview was not in session. How could that have been an accurate measure?
Chad, would you like to expand on your the way you did the counts for this project?
Yes,
please?
we actually did our counts pre-COVID. So those were not, NDOT monitors the traffic every year. The traffic volumes we use specifically for this study, we actually took pre-COVID before the pandemic occurred and the state was shut down for a while. So our numbers are reflective of that. This is a common question though that comes up. So just for everyone's knowledge, I know a lot of the studies have been going on during the pandemic. The traffic engineers have been applying a COVID, what we call a COVID factor, looking at previous history and then trying to kind of account for that, even though the pandemic has been occurring. So to answer your question, we did do these counts before the pandemic. So the lack of schools being open, and there are seasonal, We can also account for seasonal variations such as the summer. And I can't remember exactly when we took our counts, if they were during the school year or not, but if they were not taken during the school year, we would account for that seasonal variation of not having the school traffic on the roadway.
Thanks, Chad. And we have another question from Jerry Lynn, and that is, how large is the Transitions Master Plan community?
That one, I don't know off the top of my head. We did use their traffic study done by that developer on there. Laura, I'm not sure if you know, but that would be something we could get back to you on. We do have their traffic study that they produced for there, and we could also reach out to Lyon County Planning if there's been any changes to that plan.
Yeah, Lyon County Planning was going to be the best resource, and I'm going to message out to everyone, Rob Pizell, for any questions about the Traditions Master Plan or any of the planned communities out there. He's the planner for Lyon County who will be able to answer all those questions. So I'm going to send that out there, and I hope you see that you'll be able to reach out to him and he'll be able to give you some more information on that development.
Thanks, Laura. Our next question from a person just identified as VM. Do you already have land for frontage roads?
There were green lines on the displays that is NDOT right away, and there was many frontage roads that that said on them to be done by others. It's going to have to be a joint effort between Lyon County, NDOT, and the public landowners to be able to put those in. It's not going to be a simple process, unfortunately. It'd be lovely if we had the land, but the right of way will be required for this capacity project to make anything larger.
Thanks, Laura. A question from an anonymous attendee. Did we consider roundabouts?
Yes, so these concepts are very, very high level, and we have traffic signals in there now because they're modeled as traffic signals. But if we decide to go forward with the arterial concept or the parkway concept, a concept that has more interchange or intersection options, we will look at those intersections individually and evaluate roundabouts, alternative intersections, displaced lefts, anything else that we could do to make this function. Once we establish the vision for what we want this to be, do we want a lot of signals and traffic controls, or do we want a more free-flowing freeway? That's what we need to decide before we move forward with the individual intersection improvements.
Thanks, Laura. So we have a few questions regarding the timeline for the project. So there's a couple of individuals asking that, so I won't attribute to everyone's name.
So the timeline of this project is we will have our report for the study completed by July and to present to NDOT leadership and our stakeholders we've been working with. After that vision is accepted and to move forward, that's when the real work of project starts. That's when we're going to try and identify short, medium, and long-term projects that we can pull out and implement to make the long-term vision happen. So individual intersection improvements could happen within the next couple of years, while the longer, bigger project, it may take a lot longer depending on what the vision is selected to be. So it's very hard to pin down a date or a timeline for anyone saying it will be done at this time. We will have a vision determined for recommendation by this July. And from that point on, we can move forward with implementing projects and getting them scheduled.
Thank you. So we have several individuals asking about costs. Do we have estimated costs for the different options?
Yes, we do have estimated costs for the different options. We did not want to present them because they are very, very sensitive to changes. As we said, these are conceptual layouts. So the cost of each improvement can vary very drastically depending on what type of interchange we choose if we want with a controlled access, whether we did roundabouts or signals at arterial, if that was the preferred vision for the corridor. So we didn't feel comfortable presenting a determined, we are looking for this amount of money to do this corridor, because there's a lot of value engineering that still needs to happen. How can we make this more economical? What could we do to make this the best project to get our vision completed? So we did look at cost, but it is a very variable thing at this level of development.
Okay. An anonymous attendee asked, what additional travel times are we looking at with each option?
So Chad presented that in one of the slides back here. We had the different travel times that are on there. And this presentation will be available for you guys to go back through and really look into what that is, as well as the full displays of the conceptual layouts. So if you have questions about that afterwards, please email us specific questions and we can get your questions answered for specifics there. Each alternative does have a delay, a benefit and delay for compared to doing nothing. So.
Thanks, Laura. And a question from Jay Deal. Concerned about limitations to access Highway 50 due to more traffic directed through residential. Will these concerns be addressed?
Yes, once a vision is established, we are already working with Lyon County. We have Story County that we've brought in to look at our initial plans. We will have to continue to partner with all the local streets, all the local entities to make sure that we are, number one, maintaining all the access that exists. No one will lose access to their property. And number two, make sure it's a reasonable access that can be maintained, and whether it be frontage roads that the county is going to maintain, whether it be NDOT roadways, how are we going to make this system function for all of the users that need to access Highway 50?
Okay, and another question regarding funding from Wayne. Could we get federal infrastructure funds for this?
There is the possibility to do that. We have to go through this process and determine our vision and then go through the environmental process still as well, so that we can define to the federal government what we are doing, why we are doing it, and make sure we hit all those requirements. Public meeting is part of that outreach that we've already started, which always looks very good to the federal government, that we are trying to incorporate and make a partner with the public. So there is a possibility for that. I'm not sure exactly what all of the options are at this point in time, and it depends on what we are going to end up deciding for this corridor. But federal funding, state funding, all those are on the table still at this point in time, and we're going to try and find the best way to get this project delivered.
Thank you. From G. Johnson, any planned animal undercrossings?
So as part of the fencing project, we are trying to encourage the horses to use some existing drainage areas. Right now, there's not any planned crossings included because there's not right of way, and there's not a way for us to logistically put one in. We would love to put in animal crossings, but right now it's not a possibility. So we're going to try and at least fence off the animals so that we can start the process of keeping them off the roadway. If more details on that project, please email the info@dot.nv.gov and reference the horse fencing. And the designers and the managers who've been working on that project will be able to answer that in more detail than I can.
Okay, another question about frontage roads from an anonymous attendee. If we have property on a current frontage road, is there a possibility that we will lose some of it to change to new frontage road?
Anything is possible, but it will not be done without you being involved. So the outreach, please tell us what your concern is, where your property is, what you want to see. This is why we're asking. If this is a serious concern for you, that you think that you're going to lose your property for this reason, that bring it up to us, and we will be happy to talk to you about your individual property and make sure that we mark your concerns and know that these comments that you send in and these questions are going to move with this project. So for the life of this project until it's completed, these will be a part of the record for what we are doing here.
Okay, we've touched on this a bit, but maybe we can restate it. From an anonymous attendee, what multimodal improvements would be included?
So multimodal is a big deal, especially since US 50 is a known the bicycle route across the state. So we will accommodate bicycles and pedestrians where appropriate. The controlled access will have to have the bicycles not on the main roadway. So we will have to have some sort of multi-use path around that. If we do slow the traffic down to more of an arterial, there's a possibility of integrating that in or doing a separated bikeway multimodal type use through this area. So that's something that will be determined, but multimodal is on the concern list of needs that we do know we have to address as this project develops.
Okay. Thank you. And we have one asking from Chester, how much, oh wait, let me see. Sorry, they're bouncing around here. Here it is. Okay, here, a question from Chester Sikora. What is the current average speed in the corridor?
So there was a speed study that was completed in 2015, and it did show that the speed limits were appropriately marked. The speed is running a little bit higher than the posted speed limit, which is a issue we know about, and we are concerned about speeding vehicles in this area. The corridor now, it does start, I believe, at 45 and then goes up to 65 at the end of the project. So the speed limit would be dropping with the arterial and the parkway concepts, and would be increasing at least until the Pinecone intersection with the controlled access.
Okay. And another comment from Chester about pedestrian crossing concerns. You could address that.
So pedestrians are part of the area out there with signals. There would be pedestrian considerations and roundabouts or whatever traffic control would be. If there is a more controlled access facility, it would have to be some sort of off route pedestrian accommodations, more of a multimodal use path, something like that. There are some pedestrians I'm not aware of a pedestrian count that has happened. I don't know, Chad, if you guys did a pedestrian count out there for this. There currently are not sidewalks on the majority of this route. But pedestrians, multimodal, all of that is a concern that we need to address for the future plans.
Yeah, we did not do any pedestrian counts when we did our initial traffic counts.
Okay, moving on to a question from an anonymous attendee. What are the traffic volumes on Highway 50 at the 6 Mile Canyon intersection projected for 2040? What are the current volumes?
Chad, do you have those volumes up?
If you can give me a sec, I can track them down through the report real quick.
While we're waiting for Chad to pull that up, if we want to go to the next question from Lily Love. If the frontage road concept is built, will there be sound walls installed? The houses will be really close.
So with any capacity project where we're going to be adding any kind of pavement, our environmental division requires a sound study to be conducted. So with any of these alternatives, we'll have to do a sound study, and that will determine whether or not sound walls or some sort of sound mitigation will be necessary for this area. And that will all be done in the environmental phase after we determine which vision is going to move forward.
Thank you, Laura. Chad, are you ready with that information, or would you like us to move on to something else?
Go ahead and keep moving on. We're pulling up the report right now.
So we did have a question from an anonymous attendee. Is this the only meeting like this? How many people attend? I don't know if Cassie, you'd like to take that one, or
Yeah, so just as kind of we've mentioned that we're very early on in the process, but this is going to be a continued, this is going to need continued public feedback. We're really trying to hit the ground running with these alternatives initially, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the comment period because this public feedback doesn't end right now with this meeting. There's going to be an extended period of time for you to be able to submit questions, comments, and concerns. There's going to be a whole environmental process. So you, the public, are going to have a great say in how NDOT moves forward with these alternatives.
thanks, Cassie. Chad, are we ready to talk about the volumes?
So in 2020, we have the peak hours there. We have it broken out into various movements, but you're approximately looking at right around anywhere from 400 to 600 vehicles on US 50 in the what we call the AM or PM peak hour, kind of depending where you're at. We get you 2040s here. 2040, that would go up to approximately 1,400 to over 2,000 vehicles in the peak hour along US 50 at that particular intersection.
Thanks, Chad. And we do have a question about development. It may be best for, once again, for our contacts in development, but from an anonymous attendee, how much more development is expected in the near future through this corridor area?
That is a question that's going to have to be referred to Lyon County. It's the best Rob Heisel would be able to give you the best answer and most accurate for the dates of these developments going in. The developments listed on our slides for future developments are the ones that we know of that are approved and believe are moving forward rather soon. There is definitely the Lyon County Master Plan you can check out online. They have some information there, but Lyon County will be your best contact for that question.
Thanks, Laura. A question from Greg Lehman. What choice has the best chance of funding at what approximate timeline?
That's a very difficult question to answer because we are in such a beginning stages of this. And each has different challenges that it brings forward that could be a funding problem or could be a schedule delay based on their very different complexities to it. I wish I could give you an answer to that, but I really can't give you a for sure answer saying, hey, this is going to be the fastest, the cheapest, and this one's going to be the most expensive, but the best. There's no way to really determine that. They're very different feels, very different functions for the corridor. And that's what we need to find out is what is the function of the corridor, the feel of the corridor that you guys would like to see as users. And then we can go from that and define a better project getting to that feel and function and vision that will be the fastest and the cheapest that we can implement, where we can pull out hopefully smaller, quicker projects we can get out easily that will support that eventual future for the corridor. We don't want to piecemeal little projects together and end up with kind of a messier mess out there than we already know we have. So by establishing this vision, we want to cohesively pick out things we can fix that will support the end product that will be the best ending for everyone.
And Heather, it looks like we've had a slow in the amount of comments we've received, but I just want to leave it open for just about another minute or so, just to see if anybody has a question. And it looks like we just got another one. So Heather.
Yeah, so similar to the last question here's one from CT. In your professional opinion and experience, which one of these visions will most likely be pushed forward?
Oh. It's hard to say. I've seen projects be pushed forward that I didn't expect to be pushed forward, and I've seen projects I expected to not go and not go anywhere. I would love to see that the voices of the people using the roadway are heard. My ultimate desire for this process would be to come back in 6 months with a plan for whatever version is determined by the majority of people out in Dayton and say, look, we listened to you. And this is how we're trying to accommodate what you guys need. And this is our plan to make this happen for you. That's what I would love to be able to do. It's my fantasy Pollyanna world that we can make this happen where we can all try and come together and work together to make a product that will push forward and really take the people who are using the roadways opinions into consideration. So I know that's not quite answering your question of which one do you think will actually get to go, but the one that I would like to see go is the one that I can take the comments that you guys send in. We can make those adjustments. We can work together with the county, with the NDOT needs, with your community and say, look, we came up with this plan together. This is where we want to go.
Cassie, maybe while we're waiting for any more questions, I'll end the polling that we started and let everyone see the results of that to kind of show what those thought of and you can scroll down here, but as you can see, looks like looking at your first choice of the 3 long-term visions identified, the parkway and the controlled access concept were kind of basically 13 and 14 votes. When you looked at the second choice, once again, our parkway concept and controlled access concept had the majority of the votes. And then if you looked at the last choice, or probably the non-preferred option of the 3 long-term vision corridors, the arterial concept of those attending this meeting tonight led the majority of the opinions there. Looking at the biggest priority amongst those that are in attendance, safety is the highest at 50% of the responders, and then access and mobility are second and third very closely, and multimodal based on the feedback from this poll was very low for a priority. So I will leave those up for maybe another 30 seconds or so and then take them down.
Okay, we did get another question from John's computer, which is, will you be sending out another postcard if future meetings are being held?
And I'll take that one. Hi, John. So yes, we do a series of advertisements for all of our public meetings. If you received a postcard, it means that you live kind of close to the project. So we do that with all of our projects to make sure that you're aware. But for anybody that might have fallen a little bit outside of that area, we do always put stuff in the newspaper. And we also try to do some digital ads for you guys. And of course, you can always keep in touch with the project team using that email I'm sending out, as well as the NDOT page that you use to access this meeting. So several places that you can look for updates. And of course, we at NDOT will always keep you up to date and informed of what's happening with the project.
Thanks, Cassie. And along that same vein, we had a question from an anonymous attendee. Where on your website are the concepts located?
So we're going to be placing this presentation on the website immediately following the meeting, along with this recording of the meeting. So from this point on, this is kicking off our comment period. So you'll have from now until June 1st to be able to review everything and ask questions and give your concerns. So it'll be live just shortly after this meeting.
Okay, another question from an anonymous attendee. What are the general pros and cons of each option?
The general pros and cons really are, for the arterial, you're going to slow down the traffic, which could reduce the amount of severity of crashes, but it will also slow down your commute. It will provide the most access points. There's also a safety caution that the property damage crashes will most likely go up because of the traffic signals tend to increase property damage and lower severity crashes. For the Parkway, it's kind of a blend. It's a combo of, you have some access, you have some safety benefits, you have a little bit more speed, but you will have some more delay. It's a balancing act of, you have slower speed, you have less severity, you have a longer travel time, you have less access points than the arterial. For the control of access, you have the quickest speed time, you have a reduced conflict points, which will reduce crashes because of the reduction in access points. So there is a huge safety benefit there, but you do have the higher speed. So some of your crashes will be the higher severity because of the speed impact. The balancing act that you always have to try and play is the faster speeds make the commute go easier. You have to reduce your access points to have the faster speeds. And your crashes can be more severe the faster you go. The more we slow down speeds, the longer your travel time is going to take. You have some opportunity for access points. You will still have crashes. Unfortunately, I really wish we could take them all away, but we are humans. But they will be most likely be less severe because of the slower speeds. So it's really about prioritizing what is most important to you guys, having the most access points, having a quick travel time, or having the safest roadway possible. And there is some level of balance with each of the three alternatives that we can try to use proven safety countermeasures to increase the amount of safety. We can try to maintain access through other routes and consolidate points. But finding that balance for all three of them is is the trick.
Thanks, Laura. A question from Melissa. If and when action is taken, would sections be completed based on, say, a safety factor, or more like in an east to west process?
That's a great question. Ideally, we would love to identify safety concerns that need to be done immediately for short-term options based on the long-term vision. So there's an issue at Occidental, we'll say, and we know that this is a safety concern. We have the data that's proving it. We know we want to go for alternative A, B, or C. What safety measures can we put out there now that will not be a waste when we do come through with full blown out build out for this? What can we do to improve those pieces that will support the eventual future goal? So we want to hit those safety concerns and those high needs first if possible, or something could happen where we put this project together and get a grant, or we can do the whole thing, which would be amazing if we can do that. But we would love to get some shorter term projects out of this and start dividing this concept to move forward into some shorter term action items we can get out there to help increase the safety, increase the mobility, make this corridor function for as long as possible.
A question from an anonymous attendee. Have you looked at bypass options?
At this point in time, we have not seen a viable bypass option. There's restrictions with the river to the south and the development that's happened to the north. We have not been able to determine a viable bypass. The existing US 50 corridor is in the location it is, and we want to make sure we're dealing with it as appropriately as possible.
Thanks, Laura. And a question from Ken. Is there a way to get copies of the slides that Chad was using during his presentation?
Hey, Ken. So the slides are going to be available on the project website at the conclusion of tonight's presentation. But if you have any concerns about access, viewing them over the internet, you can also reach out to that email, or I'll send you a chat here, and I'll leave my email and I can send them to you directly.
Thanks, Cassie. Another one from an anonymous attendee. With control of access, will county improve local access roads to improve flows to interchanges?
We are partnering with the county. This will have to be a joint venture to try and get any of these visions pushed forward. So we will continue to work with the county and hopefully share the burden a little bit of how we're going to move forward and make sure everyone's access is maintained.
Thanks, Laura. From an anonymous attendee, I think we really need to know what development will be in the future to really be able to determine the best option. Arterial may be a better option in the future if there's more development than we know of right now. Almost more of a statement than a question.
We did reference the Lyon County Master Plan, and they would be the best contact again for any development questions. For our study, we looked at what their projected numbers are going to be, what traffic studies they had out there, and what their master plan is for the land use. So we took that into account with our projections for traffic. So we did our best glass ball. So hopefully we could account for all the development that could potentially happen out there.
And a question from Mary Ellen Comerford. And this is in regards to Occidental Drive, which I know Laura you mentioned earlier. There is a need for a dedicated right turn lane on eastbound Highway 50 at Occidental Drive. The current situation is unsafe as cars are still in the traffic lane prior to the turn.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, this is a good example of one of those places where we want to establish this vision for what we want to look eventually, the corridor to be eventually. And then we would like to come in and address these safety concerns, these immediate needs that with a solution that will support this eventual vision. Please look at the different options for Occidental on the arterial the parkway and the controlled access, and comment on what you like, what you don't like to see, anything like that. And we will do our best to come up with a plan to address the concerns that will support the vision.
Cassie, would you like us to continue, or are we getting close on time? I just need to.
So it looks like we haven't had any questions. I'll go ahead and leave it open for another minute, just to give folks some time. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about, if you didn't get your question answered here tonight, that there are future opportunities for you to communicate with us directly, the project team, and help provide some feedback. Okay, and it looks like we haven't received any further questions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move the meeting along and start closing us out. So if you were not able to submit a question during this meeting, or maybe you have more questions, you have more concerns, so this is only the beginning of the comment period. Like I've mentioned before, you can visit the project website anytime between now and June 1st to submit a comment or question. And you can either submit a comment or question just by emailing the address that you see on the screen there. But you can also find that same email. You don't have to memorize it, take a picture of it. It's going to be on the website that you use to access this meeting. And again, that's dot.nv.gov/US50 Dayton. So all project materials, information, the slides, and even the recording of this presentation, they're going to be available for you to view at your leisure on the virtual meeting website. Again, it's the same website that you use to access this meeting. So the website and the public comment period, they're going to be active from now until June 1st. So thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to your continued feedback. Have a good evening.